Welcome, Dolphins fans, haters, and everyone in between to your favorite show discussing the greatest franchise in sports, the Miami Dolphins. This is the PhinsPod. My name is Moose, your host, and Miami begins the first of their 2 joint practice sessions today as they traveled up to Chicago to compete against Matt Nagy's Bears while also prepping for the preseason opener this Saturday at 1 o'clock on Soldier Field. God, I can't wait. On today's show, we're going to touch on that matchup, how many reps to expect Miami starters to get, as well as talk about the order in which we're going to see the guys come out as the Dolphins release the first rendition of the 2021 depth chart. We'll get into all of that, but without further ado, let's dive in.
Yeah, greeting for me is the Dolphin Bears, and for both sides, you got Tua Tagovailoa in his second year, no Ryan Fitzpatrick in the mix, and then obviously from the Chicago Bears angle, Justin Fields. We've been hearing all the stories about how well he's looked, in training camp. So we'll get our first glimpse at Justin Fields in a Bears uniform.
Let's start the show on a positive note. The team announced that they've activated tight end Mike Gesicki to the roster following his stint on the inactive list due to being in protocols. And look, he had been out for a week, and despite being a vet now, you always want your best players out there implementing themselves within the scheme. And now that Gesicki's back, we can actually get a glimpse at what levels to which this offense can reach. Because remember, unlike previous years, Miami doesn't have one specific system. This isn't the Chan Gailey system. It's not the Chad O'Shea system. No, Eric Studsville and George Godsey, when speaking to the media, seem to be far more focused on having an array of formations, packages, and play calls to turn to no matter the game plan or what defense you're facing. And operating like this, it protects you against injury because your offensive coordinators have specific plays designed for each specific weapon. So if a guy goes down, then the next guy who steps up has calls that are catered to him specifically and what he does well. So from all indications, Miami's going to use a lot of motion, pick plays, and spacing to find openings and attack the defense. Just think about the pure speed that the Dolphins now have on display. You got Will Fuller, who we haven't even seen get a chance to integrate quite yet, but it's fine considering he's going to be missing week 1 due to suspension, and he is one of the more seasoned vets in the room behind only Devontae Parker. Once Fuller gets back and ready to go, the speed quotient of this team skyrockets. And using him on the outside, Miami can do a lot of things. What benefits them even more is having equivalent speed on the other side too. Either Albert Wilson or Jalen Waddle can match the deep threat that Fuller provides, forcing defensive backs and general coverages to back up. And by backing up and honoring that speed, opportunities for quick strikes just open up. Capitalizing on these quick strikes, whether it be a quick out, slants, or screens, will in turn also help the running game because it just opens up the box. Now, one key piece to this offense working as well is the tight end. Not only for blocking purposes, which Gesicki has improved at, definitely needs to improve more, but all that speed on the outside innately opens up the middle of the field, and having a legitimate threat at tight end in the receiving game only in turn forces their opposing linebackers to step back so that they don't get beat in the seam. And depending on whether that deep safety plays back due to the fear of getting beat over the top, or plays up to help the linebacker take away the middle of the field in the seam, regardless of what that safety does, something is going to be open. And that's why people are so excited about this team. Not because Tua is going to metamorphosize into some Hall of Fame caliber quarterback this year. No, he's going to take a step forward. All we need is for him to make the right read, the right decision, and then an accurate throw on time. Some of you may call that managing the game. I call that winning. And Mike Gesicki should feast this year, at least matching his season totals from a year ago, if not surpassing them. It's good to have him back and ready to go for the preseason. I'm excited to see what that looks like in this new offense. Some more positive news on the tight end front. According to Joe Schad of the Palm Beach Post, he has heard that Hunter Long's injury, although serious, is not going to be season-ending. So he may just need to be implemented during the season, which, although not ideal, especially for the tight end position, it's not nearly as bad as Hunter Long having to take the whole season off to redshirt as a rookie. So we wish Hunter a speedy recovery, as I need to get Adam Shaheen off this team as soon as possible. And as we stated at the top of the show, the Dolphins are going to be practicing against the Chicago Bears this week, leading up to their exhibition game on Saturday afternoon. And both teams are young, with one, us, on the rise, and the other, the Bears, desperate to find their footing. The guys on both sides are going to be practicing hard, and you obviously hope no significant injuries occur this week for either team. But what's more, I want to see some movement up and down the depth chart. The Dolphins released their first edition of the depth chart, and there were some surprises. Now, some caveats before we get into it. One, it's the first depth chart of camp. It's not week one, it's training camp. So Flores has a lot more leeway in who he wants to prop up, certain vets he wants to give confidence to, whatever, and then also putting some other guys down to make them feel like they have to earn a role. And rookies always tend to start lower on the chart, and we're going to contextualize each of those positions. And I already know plenty of you are going to overreact, but it is still far too early to make any final claims about who's going to end up starting and who isn't. So we can take some educated guesses, but that's all we can do at this point. So let's get through it. Starting at quarterback, no surprises. The Dolphins have Tua listed as QB1, Brissett as QB2, and then Reed Sinnett as a third-string option. And on Saturday, we're likely going to see mostly Brissett after a drive of Tua, and then Sinnett, with Sinnett likely taking over prior to halftime and then running the show through the end of the game. At running back, the depth chart goes as listed: Myles Gaskin, Malcolm Brown, Savon Ahmed, Patrick Laird, Jordan Scarlett, and 7th-round rookie Jared Dokes. Two things that stand out to me here. First, Malcolm Brown being listed as a second-team running back is slightly surprising, considering he hasn't really made much of an impact in camp yet. But to be fair, he is a completely different type of runner. So although he may end up getting less carries than a guy like Savon, he is technically the first-team short yardage back. And again, he's also the type of running back that you see make magic happen with pads on. Running between tackles in shorts and a T-shirt isn't really his game. That's where guys like Savon and Myles Gaskin thrive. And the games themselves, these preseason matchups, they're going to be huge. Patrick Laird has to fight off two young runners with speed and strength in both Jordan Scarlett and Jared Dokes. And Dokes could inevitably be stashed on the practice squad, as can Scarlett. But at this point, I think it may be hard for Laird to stay on the roster, considering the ceilings of the two runners behind him. Look, I love the intern, but his internship may be up. At wide receiver, there are a few surprises. You got wide receiver 1, Devontae Parker, wide receiver 2, Will Fuller, and in the slot, Albert Wilson. Now, before discussing each of these guys' backups, let's look at the roles. Devontae and Fuller are going to be the outside guys. They have an ability to beat a defense deep and run precise routes on the outside. That makes sense. Wide receiver 3 is essentially the slot option. It's not meaning he's the third option. And my guess is in this offense, the slot guy is going to get most of the targets. And that's where Albert Wilson's going to start. It makes sense considering he's the best player at camp right now. If you're upset that Waddle's not starting over him, I mean, I get it, but also it's kind of a good thing, a problem to have. If Waddle was starting right away as a rookie, it's like, awesome, you did draft an elite level receiver 6 overall, or at least that's what you hope. But having another guy playing just as well, that's good news. And look, in terms of play calls, schemes, alignments, don't you worry. We're going to see bunch formations with all 3 receivers on one side. You're going to see a slot guy play on the outside. You're going to see Will Fuller bump down into the slot. See Mike Gesicki on the outside. This team is going to be multiple. So this depth chart's more going to show us who is going to be on the field, not where. The depth chart is more, again, a general way to categorize skill sets. So wide receiver 1 and 2 are the traditional outside guys, with wide receiver 3 as a slot guy. So who are the outside receiving backups? Surprisingly, Jakeem Grant is behind Devontae Parker, with Robert Foster and Kirk Merritt behind him. And then behind Will Fuller on the other side, you have Mac Hollins, Allen Hurns, and Isaiah Ford. At this point, barring a poor showing in the preseason, I do think Jakeem Grant's going to make the team. In terms of skill set, it does make sense, but I feel like we've seen enough in his career, but hey, the coaches do know more. Similarly, I would love to see a guy like Kirk Merritt get an opportunity to flash this preseason and take that spot away from Jakeem, but the climb is definitely uphill. What pisses me off the most about this chart is having Mac Hollins being one of the first rotational receivers. Look, he made the miracle catch in Vegas, and I love him for that. He's a great gunner on special teams, but the man struggles to separate, and he's just not that fast. He's sort of mediocre at everything he does except for blocking, which he does extremely well. I use Mac Hollins as an excuse for Tua. So if he's one of our starting receivers, it's not a great excuse. I'm just hoping that Isaiah Ford or Robert Foster can knock him out of the running as these weeks progress, but we're going to find out. In terms of the slot position and their backups, obviously you have Albert Wilson starting, and then right behind him, first-round pick Jalen Waddle, and then Lynn Bowden and Malcolm Perry. At tight end, nothing too surprising here. You got Mike Gesicki as number 1, Adam Shaheen as number 2, and then Durham Smythe as number 3, with Ethan Carter as number 4 and Hunter Long at 5. Look, the Dolphins may end up putting Hunter Long on IR so they can stash Ethan Carter for special teams and then have another tight end serve as a backup in receiving situations as well as help in special teams. Perhaps Carl Tucker or Chris Myrick starts on the squad at the start of the season. Moving to the offensive line, this is where things get interesting. From left to right, you have Austin Jackson at left tackle, rookie Liam Eichenberg at left guard, center Michael Dieter, right guard Robert Hunt, and then at right tackle, Jesse Davis. And now the order of where these guys play, whether Eichenberg sticks at guard or moves back out to tackle, that may shift and shuffle, but the starters that we named are likely marked down in pencil. These are probably your best 5 guys. Really, the only people who can climb and take back a starting role would probably be Solomon Kindley, who's currently a backup left guard, and also Matt Skura at center if he balls out in preseason. Everyone else has secured their spots and positions over the last few weeks. So on the defensive side of the ball now, starting on the defensive line, listed as the down defensive lineman, starting with defensive end, you have Emmanuel Ogba, Christian Wilkins, Zach Sealer, Adam Butler, Jason Strobridge, Jonathan Ledbetter, and then Jerome Johnson. So, look, the way Miami identifies defensive ends is not really as standard as other teams. Our defensive ends can play outside, shade on the guard, head up on the tackle, move in, play a little nose, but gone are the days of Jason Taylor and Cameron Wake. Now, those body types tend to now play linebacker. So having Christian Wilkins and Zach Sealer listed at defensive end, they're not going to be rushing the passer from the outside. It's just the way that the defense aligns. And that's the case in this scheme. The preseason is going to allow for healthy competition between last season's rookies Jason Strobridge and Jonathan Ledbetter to earn a role and some playing time. Listed as the nose tackles, you got Raekwon Davis, John Jenkins, and Benito Jones. Again, nothing surprising here. However, I would say there's likely going to be one spot only available behind Raekwon Davis in the depth chart come final cutdown. So John Jenkins and Benito Jones are going to likely be competing for one nose tackle spot. For the interior linebacker position, Miami looks much improved. You got Jerome Baker starting, Benardrick McKinney, Duke Riley, Sam McGuavin, Vince Beagle, and then 6, Calvin Munson, 7, Shaquem Griffin, and then 8, Kylan Johnson. Miami's likely only going to keep 5 interior linebackers, if that many, so there's going to be a healthy competition playing out before our eyes at this spot. Definitely going to be exciting. Guys like Shaquem Griffin and Sam McGuavin fighting off each other, seeing who can get the spot. So in terms of outside linebackers, the depth chart goes as follows. You got Andrew Van Ginkel starting, Brennan Scarlett, and then Jalen Phillips at number 3 with Tyshawn Render at number 4. So expect to see Phillips shoot up the depth chart once he gets healthy and back on the field because Brennan Scarlett is an experienced veteran from Houston who does have playing experience alongside Benardrick McKinney before, so beating him out may not be the easiest, but let's be honest. Jalen Phillips is not some nice rotational player. He has every capability of becoming this defense's best weapon in the very near future. So I have a feeling he's going to be shooting up the depth chart once he gets healthy. Moving on to the secondary, nothing too surprising here, but we're going to make a few notes on some position alterations. So here are the guys playing on the boundary. You got Xavier Howard, baby. He's not going anywhere. Byron Jones at number 2, Nick Needham now as an outside corner, and then Noah Igbenogany as the 4th, Terrell Bonds, Javaris Davis, Trill Williams, and Tino Ellis. So the only surprising things for me here is how low Trill Williams is. I really thought he would have earned a higher ranking than 7th on the depth chart, but hey, maybe it's just sending a message to a rookie, but he should definitely be climbing the depth chart if he performs in game the way he's been performing in camp. I thought Trill would likely be best suited as a strong safety, but I believe that they want to coach up his cover abilities now, get him used to playing corner, so that later down the line, maybe a year or 2 from now, they can transition him to safety, and it's going to be easier. Because I really see Trill becoming the Eric Rowe replacement. His skill set is very similar. He has that physicality as well as the cover ability, so training him as a corner right now does make sense. The other surprising move is Nick Needham out of the nickel slot position and back to the boundary where he began his career as an undrafted free agent. And he struggled as an undrafted free agent there, but it has now been 3 years. He has improved in his coverage ability. So I think him going back to the boundary points to 2 things. First, Noah Igbenogany has not taken the reins of that third cornerback role, and the coaches want someone that they trust. And the addition of Justin Coleman to the slot has been a blessing. And then speaking of the nickel corner position, here's the depth chart there. You got the aforementioned Justin Coleman as number 1, Jamal Perry number 2, recently signed Cravon LeBlanc as number 3, and then undrafted rookie Jalen Askew. Aside from Askew, the slot corner group is deep and experienced. LeBlanc has started in the nickel, as has Coleman, and Jamal Perry has actually seen legitimate reps while also being here going back to 2019. At free safety, we have Jason McCourty and Javon Holland. And as we spoke about in the last episode, I think that's just lip service. I think the job's going to Javon Holland come opening day, and I'm really happy to see him taking charge of the role, unlike Noah Igbenogany. Hopefully, Holland shows out in the preseason and shows that he can take that starting job early and take it in earnest for week 1. Then at strong safety, wrapping up the defense, Eric Rowe, back ready to go, shut down every tight end he faces. Number 2, you got Brandon Jones. And then 3, Clayton Fejedelem and Nate Hawley at number 4. With the influx in special teams depth from both the corner and linebacker groups, I just don't see Clayton Fejedelem and Hawley making this team. Sorry, boys, but good luck in preseason and as well as for the rest of camp. I just think there's too much depth and too many speedy linebackers where you have Shaq Griffin now. You don't really need Clayton Fejedelem. And lastly, our very special specialist. The GOAT himself returns as our kicker, Jason Sanders, so no need to dive into that golden leg. Excuse me, at punter, we have a new face, no more Matt Hawk, but a face that has been impressing in Michael Pilardi. Formerly of the Panthers before he missed last season with an injury, Pilardi's back and ready to go by all accounts. According to a lot of reports from camp, he has been nailing the ball. So definitely good that we're getting rid of, once every 4 punts a shank, Matt Hawk. Glad that he's up in Buffalo dealing with those conditions. And last and certainly the least, long snapper Blake Ferguson is going to likely beat out Rex Sunahara yet again, who was dropped yet again. Poor Rex, man. The Dolphins bring him back and cut him like once a month. It's been a painful cycle now for 2 years. Poor kid. But that does it for the depth chart. Were there any surprises, anything worrying you? Let us know in the comments below as cuts do begin next week. But be sure that you're locked in with us to not miss a single thing. In terms of what to expect in terms of reps, I think that's going to depend greatly on positional security, right? Tua and the first team likely only seeing 1 drive, maybe 2 if the first drive's like a 3 and out, but no more than maybe 12 or 15 plays in my opinion. The same goes for the defense. 1 defensive drive should do it for guys like Jerome Baker if Xavier Howard even suits up. Then the second team is going to come in and play the remainder of the half. And from there, second teamers are going to play in the third and fourth quarters with those third and fourth teamers being thrown in as the game progresses. So this first game, I really think we don't know because it used to be, 4 games. The first was kind of, 1 drive for the starters. Then like how I've explained, then it's the backups. Second game, maybe 2 drives for the starters, then backups. Third game, starters play the whole first half. And then the fourth game, you don't see any starters. Now there's only 3. So it's going to be interesting to see how they implement their starters and how many reps they give. And I have faith that Flores is going to have a plan in place to give everyone an opportunity to sink or swim. Although more than just sinking and swimming at the bottom of the depth charts, you do want to see some chemistry develop on field for your starters. You want them to knock some rust off because I don't know about you, I want us clicking on all cylinders September 12th when we go up to Foxborough. I want to send a message. I want Tua to be 2-0 against Bill Belichick. So I hope that they're able to knock off all the rust, and I wouldn't be opposed to playing a little bit more with the starters so that way they can make sure that everyone's on the same page with this new offense and all these new players. But it's going to be fun going through the games at live as they're happening and then going back and analyzing them to see who made the most of their opportunities. Which player are you guys most excited to see this preseason? For me, it's got to be Jalen Waddle, of course, and Javon Holland. Also, Jalen Phillips if he manages to get healthy, but I don't think we're going to see him on Saturday. I hope we do. But regarding what to expect over the next 3 weeks, look, I hope our Dolphins show out and inspire some real excitement in this fan base because, damn, Saturday cannot get here soon enough.
Well, they're a track team when they're on the field. I mean, you give those guys a baton, they might have a chance to win the 4x100-meter relay. I mean, they can fly. The problem is they're not on the field. Will Fuller, who's had a history of injuries, isn't on the field. Devontae Parker's had a hamstring injury seemingly his entire career. He's limited now, so they have to get those guys on the field. Jalen Waddle is on the field. He made a catch today that was outstanding. We know he's tough. We know he's fast, and he has great hands. I think he's going to be an ideal addition to this offense. But those other guys have to get on the field. The guy who stole the show so so far is Albert Wilson. He's been their best receiver in training camp, and he's a big guy when you look at what they want to do with their 4 receiver set. So the other guys have to get on the field. Will Fuller has been hurt a lot of his career. Devontae Parker's had a hamstring. Those guys have to get on the field.
That's going to do it for us here today. Thank you guys so much for listening to the PhinsPod. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you always to Timothy Ritchie, member of the pod and supporter of the show over on Patreon. Check that out. Links in the description, or head to patreon.com/PhinsPod. Thank you all so much for the continued support. Please remember to like the video if you enjoyed the show on YouTube, and subscribe whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Be sure to subscribe just so you never miss a chance to chat about your Miami Dolphins. Please leave a rating and review as well if you're listening via audio, because remember, the PhinsPod's available on all platforms: Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, and of course on YouTube. Continue the conversation with us over on Twitter and Instagram at PhinsPod. I hope you all have an amazing day. Until next time, stay safe. Love y'all.